Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of the Optimized Muslim podcast. Just before I begin, a couple of notes on the podcast in general and the project and what I'm intending to do in the near future, inshallah. So I've seen that the podcast is probably the most receptive form through which people are enjoying and benefiting from the content, and that's also reflected in the growth as well. I think this kind of content, which goes into topics in more deeper detail, is kind of more suited to this format in any case. But for that reason, I'm going to focus more on the podcast and try to upload more, inshallah, multiple episodes per week. Part of doing that, because I am working on this project by myself, I have to try and optimize the format and the recording procedure. So again, in order to benefit you, you can either just listen to the podcast, but I'm going to try and include a link to a PDF document that's going to have the notes covering the main ideas discussed in here, and also you can see the actual video on YouTube where it's going to be me going through the note using a screen share application that you can follow along. Obviously people learn in different ways, and you might benefit more because you're seeing something as well as listening to something. Anyway, moving on to the topic, inshallah. This topic is how to start a new habit or resolution or something that you intend to do, whether it's a good deed or whether you're joining a new group or activity. This is very important in terms of self-development, and the reason that is because in life you're always going to be looking to start something new, especially if you're looking to improve in different areas of your life. Inevitably you're going to have to fight through that initial discomfort before you begin something new and learn how to make something into a permanent habit. So this is a skill that if you master, it's going to help you in Deen and Dunya. Obviously that's the kind of key message behind this project, and these are the kind of meta skills. I like to call them meta skills because once you learn them or you master them or you practice them, you can apply them across a variety of different areas of life in both Deen and Dunya, because it's the same underlying kind of first principles that apply. So this one, I've just explained the importance of the actual topic and why it's relevant to us as Muslims, and now I'm going to go into more detail. And the reason this came to mind is because I recently started something new myself, so these kind of thoughts were at the forefront of my mind, and instead of just noting the idea down and thinking I'm going to come to it in the future, I thought I'd just create something on this topic now. So the first step is, whenever you're starting something new, let's say you want to start doing hifz, which will entail joining a class, or another example from the more dunya perspective is, let's say you're starting martial arts or Jiu-Jitsu, right? I say dunya perspective, it depends how you view it. It can just be if you're learning it for self-defense or protecting your family or yourself, then obviously it can also be something that is good, praiseworthy from the deen perspective as well. Alhamdulillah, that's one of the blessings of being a Muslim, that you can almost link everything towards your ultimate purpose. Anyway, point number one is you have to examine and eradicate any limiting beliefs that you may hold. So these are the kind of things that we tell ourselves that will stop us from starting a new action, and sometimes people don't even realize if they haven't engaged in a lot of self-reflection. Side note, which is why journaling is important. Over time you build this self-awareness and you build an understanding of yourself and your habitual thoughts, and you can monitor and correct yourself, or try to at least. These thoughts are what kind of hold you back, and you can easily pick them up when you talk to someone else. So you need to examine yourself or your own thoughts, just like you would if you were talking to a friend. If you were talking to a friend who's saying, oh, I wanted to start going gym but I haven't been able to, and you say why, and then they'd be like, oh, too busy, your natural kind of response would be to try and help them by picking flaws in what they're saying. So you'll say, what about when you have this time? What about between 6:30 and 7:30? What about, you need to be that kind of critical with yourself as well. An example of such a limiting belief is, oh, I'm too busy, not enough time. That's probably the main one. You have to make sure you have counteracting thoughts that are ready to go, and over time you get better at this. Over time you're able to replace these kind of thoughts with new ones, right? So say if you have that thought that, oh, there's not enough time, I want to start something but there's not enough time, then you have to counteract that by explaining to yourself and carefully examining your day, and you realize how much time that you actually waste. You realize how many hours you might waste on social media or watching TV or any other unproductive activity. So then if you be truthful and say it's not about not having time, it's just that I haven't prioritized it enough, because everyone has the same time, right? So you have to kind of put that one to rest. Once you've analyzed it completely, don't let the waswasa get you back to that thought. Just think, I've already thought about this in depth, I've already worked it out that I've got enough time, so now there's no point dwelling on this. Because ultimately, here's a key point really, is that you have to focus on the thoughts that will help you. I'm just trying to write this down whilst I'm recording. Is that think the thoughts that take you towards your ultimate goal. There's no point dwelling on thoughts that aren't going to help you, because that's just going to kind of affect your chances in a negative way rather than in a positive way. So okay, that's one of the thoughts that you might have. Another example, I'm just going to try and keep this quick before I start talking for about an hour and a half. Another one is, for example, it's too late to start. I can't start HIFAs now because I'm already 25, 26, or I'm already this too late, or it's only for people who are younger, or this kind of thing. There's an old saying that I think sometimes is of help, and I used it myself, because recently when I was about to start going to this new training, I thought to myself, oh, it takes so long to actually get competence in this sport or in this art, so why am I starting now? But then I reflected on the saying that I've heard before, which is that the best time to start was 20 years ago, the second best time is now, right? Because dwelling on that's not going to affect you. So again, you have to just kind of quickly counteract your mind and kind of convince yourself, seek out examples that have succeeded. For example, if you're looking to do HIFs, you'll be able to find examples of people who have succeeded and started in their 70s, people who have done it whilst they were working full time in different roles. You have to seek out these examples. They're not going to come to you. They're not going to come to you in your normal day-to-day life, when you're not even in the field, when you're not even in and around these people. No one's going to randomly come and tell you, do you know I had an uncle that did this? You have to kind of seek it out, ask people, immerse yourself with those kind of people and that environment, and that also helps to kill that kind of negative thought. Or I've tried another one. So the third kind of negative limiting thought is that I've tried this before and I've never been able to do it before. I've tried going gym before, I've never been able to do it. I've tried losing weight before, I've never been able to do it. I've tried praying my salah before, I've never been able to do it. These kind of negative beliefs. What's the counteracting thought to that? Obviously, it's all individual. Do what works for you. If you get the underlying principle that you have to think the thoughts that will help you in attaining your goal, you don't have to actually think the specific thought I'm mentioning. I think that goes without saying. But you could say something like, different actions equals different results. The results are oftentimes linked to what actions you took. So if you take different actions, then that will give you the confidence that you should be able to attain a different result this time. So you can say to yourself, the reason I didn't succeed before is because I didn't do this. The reason I will succeed this time, inshallah, is because I'm going to do this. I have this plan, I'm going to execute this way, I'm going to change this tactic. So then that keeps you going, because you're starting something new. You're not looking to do the same thing and then fail again. Okay, so that's point number one, which is try to eradicate limiting beliefs that are going to hold you back or kind of kill your ambition before it even gets started. Moving on to the second one quickly, and that's that you have to accept that discomfort is inevitable, and accept that it's part of growth, and accept that it's through going through this discomfort that you're going to grow mentally, because it goes back to that neurology, really, that you're rewiring your brain. The whole neuroplasticity, they call it, how your brain cells can kind of when you learn a new skill, essentially your brain wires itself and creates new pathways or strengthens old pathways, which eventually makes whatever you're seeking to do a bit more easier, right? Now obviously there's a balance between always being uncomfortable and being uncomfortable to the extent that you completely dislike the activity, so it dissuades you from actually taking part. But if you accept that this is part of the process, then you're already ready for it. It's not a shock to your system. So when you do actually go to that first session, or when you do actually come home from work and it's a tiring day and you think, you know what, I've got that first training session today at 6:30, and you have that choice of either just relaxing or whatever else, or actually going through this and having to meet new people and having to engage in this new activity that's completely unknown to you, then that's where those kind of thoughts are going to try and creep into your mind, and you're already ready for it. You've already thought about this, that I know I'm not going to want to do it, but just this first time I'm going to force myself to do it. So that's another way of overcoming that. And there's a Stoic kind of principle that they mention in Stoic philosophy and the sayings of some of the older Stoics, like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, and that's negative visualization, or having already thought of things that could go wrong or things that are likely to act as stumbling blocks in your goal. Again, what it does is it kind of makes you more accepting of what's to come, because it's not new to your mind. You've already thought about it. You're not going to kind of get ambushed by the thought. Then the other kind of growth mindset thought about this is that over time you'll make this into a habit. So the more you do it, the more you'll just say to yourself the next time you feel it, oh, it's just that I know what's happening. It's just because this is going to involve some level of discomfort. My brain or my nafs is trying to tell me to go against it. Okay, you want to go fajr in the masjid. There's a million reasons that your mind or nafs is going to come up with to try and stop you from doing that, right? Now, that's when you have to think to yourself that I can make this into a habit. And there's a little mantra I sometimes say to myself. This might sound a bit strange, but I say to myself, like, habitualise and elevate. I'm not even sure if habitualise is a word, but it means something to me, and that's you just make something into a habit. So whenever there's something new and I'm like struggling to motivate myself to do it, then I just say to myself, habitualize and elevate. It's a matter of time before it becomes a habit, inshallah. And then that gets me through it. Obviously everyone has failures and sometimes it doesn't, and even if you're doing something for ages, the nature of the human being, unfortunately, is that you'll have to overcome that resistance again. If you've been going gym for years and then you take a month off, when it's that first day back, you're still going to feel that discomfort, but then you tap back into this process. You just acknowledge that this first few days or this first day is going to be hard, but then you say to yourself, habitualize and elevate. What I mean by elevate is you elevate your normal baseline practice. So just like now you're going along your daily life without this activity or habit incorporated into your life, once you've made it into a habit, that will be your new baseline, and then you kind of elevate your life if it's a good action. For example, if you start going to a weekly Islamic course, before you started that, your baseline was whatever you were doing minus the Islamic course. Excuse me. Once you start, your new baseline would be everything but also the Islamic course, and perhaps even the Islamic course might be replacing something that you were doing before that might not have been beneficial. Moving on to step number 3. Again, like I said, I'll try and make the PDF available for download, and the link to that will be in the actual website article or in the description, or in the show notes, or in the description on YouTube if you're watching there. The next one is you need to break the goal down into as small steps as possible, because the way we think is that if a goal seems really big, we're not going to want to do it. The greater the goal seems to you, the more sometimes unascertainable it seems, and the more strength you give to those doubting thoughts, and the more excuses you're going to think about. So the antidote or counteracting thought in relation to that is to simply break it down. Break the goal down into as small steps as possible, using the example of, say, starting Hifz class or starting an Islamic class. The ultimate goal would be you want to complete it, or you want to complete a year of this course. Then the micro goals, let's call them micro goals, would be you want to sign up, and then once you've done that, the next goal, you want to just attend. You can take this as far as you want to, depending on your individual level. You might say, I'm just going to go for the first session and that's it. You might say, I'm just going to go for 20 minutes and that's it, because then you've overcome that initial discomfort and it'll be easier for you to do next time. And on a deeper level, because that's what this is for, Optimized Muslim, inshallah, I like to think my audience, or who I hope my audience is to be, is interested in these kind of topics. And it leverages your dopamine circuitry. I was reading a book recently. It's called The Molecule of More. I'll reference it in the show notes. It goes into how dopamine works. It's a very important hormone that kind of has a wide-ranging impact on how the human mind functions and the human's ability to kind of aspire and motivate. And what breaking the goal down into smaller steps does, it leverages your natural dopamine circuitry, because if you break the goal down, each time you attain the smaller goal, you get a little burst of dopamine in your brain, which makes you feel good, which is why sometimes people abuse this by having a to-do list where they just write something down just to tick it off. I think we've all done that sometimes. Even I've done that. And so you can leverage this to your favor. If you break the goal down, you feel like you've accomplished something. It creates momentum, and it creates that sense of self-efficacy, and that makes you want to continue. So that's that point. And it comes from this research by a professor called B.J. Fogg, I think, from Stanford, if I remember correctly. And he had this little saying about flossing one tooth, or just doing one push-up, just to start that habit process. Because once you've flossed one tooth, you're very much more likely to continue. You're not going to just floss one tooth and say that's it for today, but you've given yourself permission that you can do that if you want to, because it's still a micro step. So you need to think of it from that perspective. Point number 4 and final point. I need to go and get ready for work as well. Also, this is just one take. I seem to be flowing with my words, but alhamdulillah, I am in a bit of a rush as well. So I'm using this format so I can just upload it straight away. Final point is that once you've decided on a course of action, once you've evaluated the reasons, you weighed everything up and you're definite in your intention to go ahead with it, and you know your reasons and you know your whys and you know it's the right thing to do, you prayed istikhara and you made dua, then it's time to execute. Less talk, more excuse me, less talk and more do. You've done the thinking, now it's time to execute. And this is especially important for over analytical thinkers, type A personalities. We like to think about things or analyze them, and sometimes, obviously most times, I think it's overall a positive quality that will help and protect you, but in some cases it can work against you. Things like entrepreneurship, where sometimes it's more important to just take action and just do it rather than thinking of the downsides. So here, once you've made your mind up, it's time to go. Once you've kind of exhausted all those negative thoughts and you've kind of thought of the responses and antidotes to them, You just have to cut it off at the root. You have to cut the thought off at its root and think, I've already evaluated everything, so now I know what my action is and I just need to do it. And you remind yourself, how will you feel afterwards if you don't do it? You're going to regret it. There's a saying that discipline weighs ounces and regret weighs tons. Yeah, discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. Afterwards you're going to saying, why didn't I do this, and I've wasted more time. So you put yourself in that mindset and just do it. And then you can use other techniques for this as well. I'm not going to go into it too deep, but you can use a pre-commitment device, some form of accountability. Tell a friend that you're going to do it. You can even use more extreme techniques of promising to put some money towards a cause that you don't like if you don't follow through with what you said. All of this is designed to make you go through with that initial step before you can make it into a habit. So I'm just struggling now because my throat is quite dry, but that concludes this topic. I hope this was beneficial. It's even helped myself in kind of putting together my thoughts on this topic. And like I said, what I will say is that if you have ever benefited from this content, and inshallah I'm going to be uploading more and more, then just take a screenshot of the podcast app when you're listening and share it on social media, or just tell someone about it as well. This is all fi sabilillah, not asking for anything else at this stage. So alhamdulillah, keep me, or make dua if you benefit, and you can download the PDF in the links provided. Jazakallahu khairan for listening. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.